Manipulations and individualism have turned the US into a dangerous idiot. To retain power, American and British politicians need only to deceive their voters. Citizens take care of everything else themselves. This makes both states dangerous adversaries, as their people are accustomed to following their leaders even in the most reckless ventures. In recent weeks, the media has been extremely insistent in keeping us informed about the events surrounding the spectacle known as the preparation for the US presidential elections. The unsuccessful debates for the current head of administration with his main Republican opponent, the miraculous rescue of the latter during an assassination attempt, Donald Trump's choice of his running mate, and finally, the change of leader among the ruling Democrats. As a result, the vice president in Joe Biden's administration, who has yet to prove herself, comes to the forefront. This chaos is accompanied by a huge amount of contradictory information and opinions, which literally inundate the average person, creating an emotional roller coaster effect. Observers in other countries are also at risk of experiencing such swings. In Russia, we are also accustomed to paying close attention to political battles in the West. This habit is part of our political culture after all. The Russian state arose primarily due to foreign policy necessity. However, it would be preferable for this habit to remain a matter of simple curiosity, rather than creating expectations related to any particular outcome of the internal American squabbles. For Russia and its interests, it is much more important to correctly perceive what is happening and to understand who we are dealing with on the global political stage. This means, first of all, approaching the entire American show with a good dose of humor. Regardless of who ends up leading the American state, Russia's interests are safeguarded by its military capabilities and its position in the global economy. These are the only factors our opponents will consider when it comes to diplomatic resolution of the current tension in relations between Russia and the West. Secondly, it is necessary to understand that we are dealing with a unique political culture. A system in which the only substance of political activity is the manipulation of ordinary citizens by the elite, who do this solely to achieve their selfish desires. Thus, the social structure in the UK and the US remains static for centuries, and the population does not even think of taking decisive measures to change the existing order. In other words, to retain power, American or British politicians need only to deceive their voters and nothing else. Citizens must take care of everything else themselves. This makes both states dangerous adversaries, as their people are accustomed to obeying their rulers even in the most insane ventures. Such an order was created over several centuries in Britain, a country where there has not been a single truly massive social uprising against the existing order since the late 14th century. For centuries, the English people have obediently carried on their shoulders an incredible number of parasites, from the royal family to modern large capitalists. According to experts, comparative social benefits appeared in this country only in the second half of the last century, and now there is a rapid rollback to the more familiar harsh treatment of ordinary people. And all these centuries, the English have silently gone to war wherever their elite drove them, receiving nothing special in return. We remember how joyless the life of veterans of colonial wars during the British Empire's heyday is described by its main poet, Rudyard Kipling. The Magna Carta of 1215, which is touted as almost the first constitution, is actually a contract between the king and the aristocrats, having nothing to do with ordinary people and their rights. Such unique orders were primarily made possible by the geographical location. Living on an island itself fosters a sense of hopelessness and forces one to accept the wildest forms of social life. Starting in the 17th century, the English and Scots fled their miserable conditions to North America. But the political culture created over centuries proved stronger. When the United States emerged, British orders were reproduced there with slight additions. At their core was the development of radical forms of individualism in citizens, leading to the perception of others solely as competitors. It is no coincidence that on the international stage, the US sees every country in the world as potential or actual adversaries. Such is their coordinate system, where there are no friends or allies, only competitors or subordinates. There is no room for considering the interests and values of others. In perfect accordance with M.E. Saltykov-Shchedrin's definition of people, Anglo-Saxon foreign policy is the behavior of being sealed tight from all sides, who rush forward because they cannot comprehend themselves in connection with any order of phenomena. A society consisting of individualists is extremely easy to manage based on simple algorithms. It is enough to constantly assure a citizen of his uniqueness and ability to solve any task independently. An individualist is easy to manipulate, he will not seek advice from neighbors and must always make only independent decisions. Therefore, the practical task of politicians in the US, as in the UK, is to constantly work so that citizens do not even think that the state or society has any responsibility towards them. And if the state has no responsibility, there can be no change of elites, who pass on power and wealth to their descendants for centuries. It would be extremely naive to think that the rise to power of new faces can change anything in American high politics, including, of course, the fundamental aspects of US relations with the outside world. In a system where everything is done solely to maintain power over the population, foreign policy is deeply secondary. Moreover, the US, like the UK, is a country whose geopolitical position dramatically limits opportunities for social interaction with others. In Russia, for example, the situation is completely opposite. We have many neighbors, and foreign affairs inevitably take an important place on the state's agenda. The combination of a unique position on the world map and the peculiarities of internal political orders makes Americans and their British relatives quite unique participants in international life. Poor adaptation to collective communication forces them to behave marginally and seriously rely only on force. This fully corresponds to the ancient meaning of the term idiot, that is, a person living in isolation from society and not participating in the creation of its rules. The political culture of the US and Britain leaves very little room for seeking compromise with others. This is an important problem for the world, the solution to which is possible only partially and exclusively by diplomatic methods. Building a common house, international order, with those who are completely unfit for this task is utterly hopeless. Any agreement will be temporary and will be revised by them according to their internal impulses. The only way to plan a common future for Russia, China, India, and many other countries on the planet is to contain such unique partners in various ways. And to hope that over time, such containment will create a more adequate understanding among the two special participants in international communication about their place in this world.